Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. This is Dr. Jeanette DeWitt with DeWitt Physical Therapy and Wellness. And today we're going to talk about scoliosis. I am a physical therapist, an athletic trainer, and a fitness coach. And I wanted to take time today to recognize that June is National Scoliosis Awareness Month. And so I want to talk a little bit about the different curves that somebody might see in a scoliosis of their spine. Well, first of all, we have to define scoliosis. In general terms, this is a lateral curvature of the spine. Now, there are two main types of curves, a C curve and an S curve. We can also have a curve that occurs to the right or curves to the left. So I'm going to get into a little bit of terminology here in the beginning, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards. Dextroscoliosis means that the curve is going to be usually occurring in the thoracic spine and maybe seen in the lumbar spine, but it's typically going to be that curve to the right, and it's going to typically be a C curve. The reason that it happens more in the thoracic spine or the mid-back region, and the reason it occurs to the right, is because the body will naturally direct the curve away from the heart. We don't want the bone of the spine to be pressing into the heart, and the body will always choose the path of least resistance and the path that's going to help it to survive. So we don't want to see a spine going to the left where it's going to be pushing into the heart. So dextroscoliosis can occur is a curve to the right, and it can be a C curve, typically in the thoracic or mid-back region, and the curve is typically to the right. Now, it can also demonstrate a curve to the right in the lumbar or the low back region. So I don't want you to think that it can't happen in the low back, but we typically see it in the mid-back section. Now, you can also have an S curve, and it is exactly what it means. There is an S or a double curve that looks like an S. So you'd have the first part of the C going to the right, and then the second part of that C would be the reverse. That would probably be going to the left and the lumbar region. So I hope that makes sense. We have the C curve to the right, and we have an S curve as well. Now, if we see a curve going to the left, that's called a levoscoliosis. And this usually occurs in the lumbar spine. Now, we can see it to the thoracic spine, but for the reasons I mentioned earlier, usually in the thoracic spine, you're going to see that right curve because we don't want the bone to be, and the body knows that it doesn't want the bone to be pressing in towards the heart. So that levoscoliosis is typically going to be in the lumbar region. Again, you can have that C curve, and you can have the S curve, which is the double curve, whereas the C curve is more of a single curve. So if we look at a typical spine, normally it's going to be straight when we have a C curve versus an S curve. So C curve is a single curve, S curve is a double curve. Now, what can a physical therapist do when somebody has scoliosis? Well, what we look at is the two sides of each side of the curve. So if we have a curve like this, that means this part here, the inner part of the C, those muscles are shortened and compressed together. Whereas the muscles on the outside of the curve on the C are stretched out and typically weaker. What does that mean for you? It means that you have some muscle imbalances. We want to stretch out the shortened muscles, and we want to strengthen the weakened muscles. And this can get really complicated when somebody has an S curve, because now they have muscles on one side of the body that a section of them are short and a section of them are long. Versus on the opposite side, it would be the exact opposite, where if the curve is going to the right, then the right side of the curve is going to have shortened muscles, and the left side of the curve is going to have, the right side of the curve is going to have lengthened muscles, and the left side of the curve is going to have shortened muscles. So we have to treat that person differently. We have to treat those muscles differently to try and slow down the progression of the curve, to potentially, depending on the age, help to reverse the curve, and or to prevent the curve from getting worse. Now, a lot of people think once they have a scoliosis, they will always have a scoliosis. And I will tell you in my experience that it is very difficult to get rid of a scoliosis in the adult form, especially if you think of a senior or a seasoned person who's had a scoliosis for multiple years, that those bones have really started to form that way. It's going to be a real challenge, really difficult to reverse that. But we can slow down the progression of the curvature and slow it down and try and prevent it from getting worse. And an adolescent or a young child with scoliosis, sometimes we can do things with bracing or different exercises to try and slow down the curvature, reverse the curvature, or it is possible that the person may need surgery to correct the scoliosis. So lots of different options are available, and I don't want people to just think, oh, once I have it, it's just going to get worse and I can't do anything about it. That is a myth. You can do a lot of things to help with scoliosis, and many of them can be done in physical therapy by stretching and strengthening the correct muscle groups. Now, it sounds a little bit simplistic though. Well, let's just stretch the short muscles and strengthen the weak muscles. And there are many factors that must be addressed besides just stretching and strengthening. So for example, when somebody comes into my office and I'm looking at them, I'm looking at their posture, I'm not just going to look at their spine. I'm going to look at how their head is positioned, how their shoulders are positioned. I'm going to look at their pelvis and see if their pelvis is moving the way it should and maybe contributing to the scoliosis. And I'm going to just see what else is out of alignment that may be creating a root cause of the problem for a scoliosis. Sometimes a scoliosis is idiopathic, meaning it's happening and it can be congenital. So there are genetic factors that can play into a person having scoliosis. But there are also some habits that people develop that can also create scoliosis. A perfect example of this may be a gentleman who keeps his wallet in the back pocket of his pants. Now, if that same gentleman is walking around, he's not putting pressure on his buttock region and on that wallet because he's standing and he's walking. But if that same person is sitting at a desk and he's got a wallet in his back pocket, that is going to raise that side of the pelvis up so that one side of his pelvis and his spine is sitting differently now than the other side. What happens when that person is sitting on that wallet for 8 hours a day? Multiply that by 10 years of office work. That person could be creating a pelvic issue where they're out of alignment and could be creating a scoliosis just because they're sitting on their wallet. Now, I'm not trying to scare anybody here if they sit with their wallet on occasion, but if you're not sitting flat and evenly on both buttocks, you need to make that adjustment by just moving your wallet to the front pocket or placing it in your coat pocket and not having it in your pants pockets at all. So it seems like a simple solution, but that could be a factor and why somebody may be out of alignment. An example would also be a person who's carrying a heavy purse. The weight of the purse tips them to one side, and if they always carry their purse on, let's say, the right side, then it's going to change the way their body is distributed, and it's going to create a lean to one side of the body. And this can contribute to a scoliosis type position over time. Again, sitting on a wallet on occasion, carrying your purse on one side of your body on occasion is not going to create a scoliosis. But if you have a risk factor for scoliosis, if you already have a scoliosis, or if you have a history of someone in your family with a scoliosis, then these are things that you want to try and create more symmetry and either rotate your purse or don't sit on a wallet. Now, over the time, the body will adapt and will take the path of least resistance. So if you're always leaning to one side, then you're going to be stretching the opposite side and shortening the side that you're leaning to. In physical therapy, we can do stretches to overcome that imbalance. So again, we would stretch the muscles that are shortened, and we would strengthen the muscles that have been stretched out. Now, because scoliosis can be so impactful, there are some things in physical therapy that we typically look for. We look at the scoliosis and the curve of the spine. We look at the pelvis. We also check for leg length discrepancy. If somebody has a shorter leg, this can create an imbalance on one side of the pelvis or the hips because one leg is shorter. And that leg length discrepancy actually will go away when the person sits. So when the person sits, their pelvis is level. When the person stands, the short side drops down. So we can take a look at that, and we can help to correct that by creating a shoe insert to make sure that the pelvis is level when they're standing. So these are simple things that a simple scoliosis check can help with. And this month, because of National Scoliosis Awareness Month, I am offering free scoliosis screens. You can put a comment in the chat box below, or you can contact me at 262-842-2220, or email me directly at Jeanette@DeWittPTWellness.com if you would like to have a free scoliosis screen. This is basically a free discovery visit where we can discover what your spine is doing, what your pelvis may be doing, and if you have a leg length discrepancy. This is a free scoliosis screen, and it's a way for you to basically learn a little bit about your spine, because it's really hard to check your spine in a mirror without, you have to hold the mirror up and then you have to bend forward, and that's really a challenge. You really need a second pair of eyes on that, and a skilled person who's checking for the scoliosis and for any imbalances between the pelvis, the leg length, and the spine. I encourage you to share this video with anyone you know who might be having back issues, who maybe has mentioned they've had a scoliosis previously, or even sometimes people are embarrassed by having the scoliosis because it looks uneven. If they wear a swimsuit, and they might be self-conscious about it, but sharing this video lets people know that this opportunity is out there for them to have that checked, and that they can do something about it. And this, I'm going to speak to parents here of young children, because there are a lot of concerns with parents who have children with scoliosis. This is something that we can work with and that we can help your child with. A lot of parents are afraid that their child is going to have a deformity, get made fun of in school, and things like that. And that doesn't have to be the case, because there are things that we can do to help them, either by bracing, working with the pediatrician, doing specific exercises for scoliosis, things that can help them so that they can participate in normal activities and not be so self-conscious of that scoliosis. Again, I'm offering free scoliosis checks for anyone who is interested. Please share this information for them so that they can have a free screen and get the care that they need. Thank you so much. I look forward to any questions that you may have, and please post those questions or comments into the feed. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.